Hello, and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And we are wrapping up our conference breakdowns in college basketball. It's been a lot of content in a short amount of time, but it's been a ton of fun. And we saved the best for last. Tim, we're wrapping up with your Big Ten. We started with the Big East, my conference. We're ending with your conference. So, Tim, you ready to run it?
Let's run it.
Let's do it. So, Tim, you're our Big Ten expert. Sum it up for us. What we got?
I mean, this is a really talented conference. I mean, you've seen throughout the year, the Big Ten has shaken up so much in the top 25 rankings with teams getting upset with Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, teams like that in the upper echelon, where anybody can beat anybody on any given day. And you've seen some dark horses throughout the conference who have definitely made some noise and had some highs and lows. So we're going to get going through all of that here.
Yes, we are. So the first team that we're going to talk about is the Wisconsin Badgers. And when I look at the Badgers, they're probably the best overall team in the Big Ten. You know, they have Johnny Davis, who's one of the most dangerous players in the country, and they play together as a unit, supplanted by Chucky Hepburn, Tyler Wall. This team can win games and beat any team in the nation, including a sweep against Purdue. Sorry, Tim, we're hitting on that sore spot a little bit.
But we'll be covering a couple of those at least.
Oh, yes, we will. But Wisconsin is leading the pack in terms of teams here in a very, very competitive Big Ten.
They're just an impressive team outright. I mean, there's a reason that they've won all the games they have and that they've ended out 24-5, at least for now. Johnny Davis he's just one tough dude. It's really hard to guard him. And as shown by the most recent Purdue Wisconsin game,
Johnny Davis, he can play basketball.
Yeah, indeed he can. And even if, as Purdue did, even if you hyperfixate on him so hard, they've got other guys that can beat you. You've got Chucky Hepburn, who came up really big lately. Tyler Wall is, in my opinion, I think one of the most underrated, undersized big men in the league. He's got incredible touch, incredible feel around the rim, that even against guys that are significantly bigger than them, he's just got the feel to be able to get guys off his back enough to go around him and score. So they're a really complete team. They've been playing really well. They shoot the ball pretty well, and they defend pretty decently. So it's going to be hard to beat them when they're playing good basketball. You kind of just got to hope for an off game for these Wisconsin Badgers.
Mm-hmm. They are a team that is playing well, and they are hard to stop. Now we'll take a look at the Illinois Fighting Illini. This is a very, very talented team that has been hurt pretty often throughout the year. They've never been fully healthy. One of the things with the Illini is that they can light it up from three. They are a very, very good shooting team. They have one of the best players in the nation in Kofi Cockburn, and Andre Curbelo is an X factor if he plays well.
Yeah, like you said, this team is full of guys that can make a big difference on any given game, and you don't know who's going to be the one to hit you. Kofi Cockburn is just an absolute beast.
Oh, that's right, because they shorten his name on television because there's some phrases that you can't say. Oh, whatever.
Who knows? All I know is Kofi Cockburn is Kofi Cockburn to most of the sports world.
That is very good point.
Averaging 21 and 10.5 is a monster stat line, and that's why he's considered to be one of the best players and one of the best big men in all of college basketball. But you've got a lot of pieces around him with Alfonso Plummer, who lights it up from three and can hit six in your face in a game if he's on. Trent Frazier's a guy that really holds down the fort for them and is a very good scoring threat, especially when he gets going. And you go down the line with guys that can shoot the ball really well and fill their roles very, very well. So they're another team that when they're on, they're very tough to beat. And they've had a couple of mishaps throughout this season. And Purdue kind of had their number, winning both, sweeping the season series against them. But they gave them some pretty tough games. And they're a team that if you do not have a particularly strong front court or physically strong big man, Kofi's going to find a way to walk all over you. So they're a matchup nightmare for a lot of different teams.
Yeah, when the Illini are healthy, they are incredibly dangerous. Now, let's take a trip to West Lafayette, Indiana, and let's look at the Purdue Boilermakers. Tim, I'm going to go, I don't know, do my taxes or something. Just talk. You got this. You don't need me.
Hey, I mean, safe to say I've seen a lot of this team this year. Purdue is a team that can beat you in a whole lot of different ways, especially when they're on. Offensively, they're one of the top teams in the country, averaging 81 points per game. In terms of three-point shooting, they're also one of the best overall teams, having 8 guys, and that is with Jaden Ivey dipping under 40%. They have 8 guys that shoot 40% or higher from 3. So they've got a lot of guys who can light you up from all different positions. Obviously, the front court tandem of Zach Edey and Travion Williams is one of the most premier in the country. Even though we've seen Travion have some struggles lately in the past couple of games, they need to get him back on track. But Zach Edey's proven why you cannot teach size at 7'4", averaging 15 and 7.5. Shooting one of the he was the best for a while, but shooting one of the best field goal percentages in the league. Oh, hey, welcome back.
Oh, hey, I'm back. What did I miss? Have you been talking boiler ball?
What are the odds? I'm still going. But yeah, they're a very good rebounding team with those guys in the front court. They've got a lot of great role players, and they go very deep into their bench on a lot of different games. And of course, I haven't even really mentioned the prowess of Jaden Ivey and what he's been able to do in so many different games this year coming up big. So they've got a lot of pieces. When all of them are together, they're incredibly hard to stop. It's just whether or not they're going to be able to put together enough of the pieces to stop losing some of these close games that have been plaguing them for most of the season.
How was your monologue? Did you enjoy it?
I had a good time. I love talking my boiler ball. So
yeah, I'm not going to add too much. They're pretty talented. They got the 2 dominant big men, which I'm sure you talked tons about. They got Jaden Ivey, which I caught at the end. The one thing that I kind of am concerned about with the Boilers is their defense. Yes. They're pretty inconsistent at times.
I talked all about their offense, but not really much about their defense. But yeah, they've been definitely suspect a lot of times this year in terms of just not being quite the defensive-minded team that Purdue Boilermaker teams usually are, as well as the fact that they're prone to breakdowns a lot. And when they break down a lot at one given time. It's not little here and there. They break down in bunches, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that can definitely be their undoing if they're not careful. But Tim, I'm sure you've talked enough about your Boilers. Are you ready to move on, or you got anything else?
No, I'd say we're good to move on. We got a lot of teams in this conference. So
very good point. Let's go talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes. And when it comes to offense, this offense is highly, highly explosive. The caveat to that is they give up a lot of points as well.
Yeah.
So if the offense falters and the defense doesn't pick up the slack, which it doesn't when the offense falters, they're in trouble. Keegan Murray leads the Big Ten in scoring. He's up there in scoring in the nation, over 23 points a game. And this team can put simply light it up. That's their offensive identity. They score a lot.
Yeah, they're a very, very electric team. Obviously, Keegan Murray being one of the best scorers in the country, and obviously the leading scorer here in the Big Ten. He's also a very efficient scorer, shooting 56% from the floor and 38.5% from 3. Chances are, even if you're in his face, he'll definitely knock down a couple just based on feel. He's that good of a player. But they've got a lot of. He is that guy. But they've got a lot of guys around him that can help out on the offensive end. One of the guys that he definitely struggled a lot to start the year, but has picked it up a little bit as of lately, is Jordan Bohannon. He's been a huge part of these Hawkeye teams in the past, but he hasn't quite figured out that consistency this year, especially from 3. He's still shooting a fantastic percentage, but he is very on or off. He'll make 6 and make 0 in a game, just depending on whether or not he's on. But they've got quite a few guys that fill in those role players, and that's why they're one of the best offensive teams, but they definitely do not have a very defensive-minded lineup in terms of just the guys' overall defensive talent, as well as kind of the size they run with.
Yeah, Iowa, they live and die by their offense, and when they have it figured out, they're incredibly hard to stop, but when they don't, it's not the greatest in the world. After that, we'll move to the Ohio State. God, I hate how they have the in front of.
It bothers me. It's always bothered me.
Who do you think you are? Anyway, my personal feelings about Ohio State aside, they're a confusing team because they can play really well, but then again, they've faltered as of late, and they've thrown up some stinkers. They lost against Maryland, and then they lost against Nebraska, two of the worst teams in the Big Ten Conference. I mean, luckily they stopped that slide with a much needed win against a faltering Michigan State team, but they're definitely going to have to turn it around. I mean, a couple weeks ago, they were a 4 seed. Now they're sitting around a 7 and 8. And this is a slide that really can bite them if they don't turn it around.
Yeah, this team has definitely been an all or nothing team as of late. EJ Liddell, obviously a fantastic player, averaging 19.5 points per game and 7.8 rebounds per game. But you've seen when they're off, they're off. And that's why that's what led to those losses against Maryland and Nebraska. But overall, especially on paper, they're a very good shooting team, averaging 37.2% from three. So they can definitely light you up from three. I think one of the reasons is obviously EJ Liddell has really improved his 3-point game over the last couple of years to really stretch the floor. And that's what's made him such a complete offensive scoring threat. But one of the guys that's really emerged is guard Malachi Branham. He lately has been huge for when other guys have not been able to pick up slack. He's averaging 13.1 points per game right now and shooting 44% from three. So he's been huge for them lately. But the problem is he's another guy. I would say he actually more so than Liddell. Liddell's been pretty darn constant with his scoring, which is why he's up near 20. But Branham has been on and off. He's had games of 32, and then he's had games where he dips below 10 again, just depending on his shooting performances. But they need him and other guys to really pick up some of the slack heading into this postseason if they're going to continue to be able to play with some of the best teams in this conference.
Yeah, when your top guys aren't exactly playing to the standard that they set for themselves, who is going to turn it around? Who is going to pick up the slack? Who's going to step up and hold down the fort for Ohio State? A lot of question marks to be answered, hopefully, in the future. After that, we take a trip to one of my favorite teams in this Big Ten Conference because they're the three constants in life: family, religion, Rutgers basketball. Oh, man, let's go. Love me some Rutgers Scarlet Knights. They're a bunch of homebodies. What can I say? They play well at the rack and literally nowhere else. But this is a team that has tournament experience. They were in the tournament last year. And if the ball bounces their way, they can be a bid stealer. And Tim, you know all about Rutgers and the ball bouncing their way. Ron Harper Jr., he has been a nightmare to Indiana teams in the Big Ten. I mean, and that 3 against Indiana at Assembly Hall pretty much kept their season alive and has put them.
They needed that win badly.
That has put them on the right side of the bubble. So I'm pulling for this Rutgers team. They're fun to watch. They're scrappy, and they find ways somehow to get it done.
Yeah, scrappy is absolutely a word that I would use to describe this team. They're definitely a grinded out team, especially at the rack, as they'll do whatever they need to on both sides of the ball to try to win the game. They're not a fantastic offensive team most of the time. Usually that's why they've won some of these close games, but also lost some of them depending on, like you said, how the ball bounces in their court. The experience that they have from Ron Harper Jr. and Geo Baker goes a long way for kind of bringing in the rest of this team. And I think a big difference in this year for Rutgers has been the emergence of Clifford Amourier. He has just been a stud down low, despite not being a physically imposing big man. He's so athletic.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't need to be that traditional big punch in the mouth style of big man as long as it works. And for Clifford Amourier, it definitely does.
He fits into this team very, very well. And that's why he's been a real big guy for them down the stretch. But it's just a matter of whether or not they're going to be able to pull out enough offense for a lot of these games, because some of these close ones is they'll win ones in the 60s, even close to the low 50s on some of them. And if they let teams get out on offense against them, they have a tough time usually closing that gap. Just kind of with the way that their offense, they're a relatively slow offense. they like to get into their sets and kind of break you down one-on-one, either with Ron Harper, Geo Baker, get guys open shots in the post with Amorie and whatnot. But they've had a lot of statement wins in the middle of that middle of their season, and then tripped up a little bit. So that's what kind of puts them on that bubble there. But especially if they're able to win a game or two in this Big Ten tournament, which with the talent they have and the way that they can play,
certainly realistic for
them.
Yeah,
very realistic. It's just whether or not they're going to be able to pull that out. But they have a high chance of making the tournament if they get a couple of those wins.
They absolutely do. Now, we'll head over to East Lansing to take a look at the Michigan State Spartans. And they were a guarantee in the tournament about a month ago. They can be a good basketball team, but down the stretch, they've been incredibly, incredibly mediocre. They've lost 7 of their last 9, and if they keep losing, they're in trouble. So the interesting thing about Michigan State is I can't tell who their best player is. I can't tell who their leader is. It could be anybody on any given night, which is good. It can be an advantage, but when you're playing inconsistent basketball and you're losing and you're sliding, that is not an advantage that Michigan State says proudly that they'd like to have, because I don't know, is Max Christie their best player? Is Tyson Walker their best player? Is Marcus Bingham Jr. their best player? AJ Hoggard? I don't know. I can't tell. And as far as Michigan State goes, I can't really tell where this team is going.
Yeah, this team has struggled, I think, more than most, if not all, Tom Izzo teams in recent memory of discovering an identity. They don't know whether or not they want to beat you on offense or on defense, and they don't know who's going to do it. And one of the names you didn't even mention was Gabe Brown, who actually leads them in scoring. But Gabe Brown is, in theory, he on paper, especially going into the season, was expected to be the guy to really emerge and be their number one. But he just hasn't quite gotten it there. And I don't know whether it's a problem of volume or the way that they've ran their offense. But clearly he's not doing that particularly well, averaging 11.5 points per game. He has the ceiling to be able to do a lot more, but he's just not quite at that height yet.
I mean, I think that's a pretty good microcosm of Michigan State themselves. They have the ceiling to be something more, but they're just quite not right now.
Yeah, and there's so many of those individual guys that have that same problem where each one of them is a better player than they have been showing in the team. And I don't know if it's just a matter of the way they run their offense or the way that their team flows isn't really necessarily quite utilizing each of those guys the best. But it's kind of hard to tell. Overall, I mean, they're a very good 3-point shooting team. But the problem is they're also a team that's on or off. They're very streaky. They can go and hit 4 out of 5 in game and then go and miss 7 or 8 in a row. In some games they've really fallen flat from the 3-point line, and that's caused some of their mishaps in these last 10 or so games. But they're a team that can play at a really high level. They were really highly thought of at the beginning of the season. And they've kind of just been slowly knocking their way down. And now they're kind of really in trouble lately. If they hadn't gone and upset Purdue, they'd be in significantly more trouble than they are now.
The win against Purdue was much needed for Michigan State to keep their hopes alive.
Yeah, but they also still need a very solid Big Ten tournament performance to not be incredibly nervous come Selection Sunday.
Yeah, you definitely want to be as secure in your spot as possible. And if Michigan State keeps losing, I mean, God forbid they lose in their first game in the Big Ten tournament, they could be sweating come Selection Sunday. Yep. So let's go across the state and look at another team that's really had an up and down year, the Michigan Wolverines. Now, they have been through a lot, especially in terms of Mr. Howard wanting to throw hands against Wisconsin. That was, a little swipe. I guess the silver lining from that little scuffle is that they get him back now for postseason. But Michigan is still, they're going to be sweating come Selection Sunday. They're in the last 4 in right now. They're really hanging on, and they just need a good Big Ten tournament to secure that spot as well.
Yeah, they have been all over the place this year after having such incredible high expectations at the beginning of the year. They've had some pretty solid wins throughout the season, including obviously that thrashing of Purdue after that long stretch of Purdue playing a lot of games in a row. They went into Michigan, and Michigan just completely flattened them. But they've had some really, really confusing losses as well, including, like, for instance, you look at this team and they've had some wins against some very good Big Ten teams. And then they're like, we'll lose by 14 to UCF.
Why not?
So, and they've got the talent. They've got some really good guys like Eli Brooks and Caleb Houston that support, obviously, main man Hunter Dickinson pretty darn well, but it's just a matter of what versions of those guys are you going to get, because individually and as a team, they're a very on and off team. They're streaky. They build off of each other. So if some of them are having bad games, it's kind of hard for other ones to kind of just flourish and save the day. So that's, I feel like, kind of been the epitome of this team this season. And obviously Hunter Dickinson has been a great player, averaging 18.4 points per game and 8.5 rebounds per game. He's definitely one of the best big men in the Big Ten, but he's shown that he isn't able to day in and day out kind of drag them to victory over some of these better teams in the Big Ten, because, as we've said, the Big Ten is so competitive. But I don't know. They're so confusing because pretty much no matter who they get matched up with in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, I feel like they could win or could lose to anyone.
Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment of this Michigan team. There's really not much more that I can add here, but let's go to another team, and the final team that we'll cover in this Big Ten episode, a team that is fighting for their tournament lives, the Indiana Hoosiers, one of the more storied programs in the Big Ten. Yeah, Tim, I wonder how you feel about Indiana.
I have my opinions.
Oh, do you now? But this team runs through Trace Jackson Davis. He is a beast down low. He can beat you in a number of different ways. That team is going to go as he goes. And as far as their tournament hopes go, there's a game and there's a team that they play at a place that is very, very big. It's very, very important. It's maybe going to be the biggest matchup all season in the state of Indiana as far as college basketball goes. Tim, I wonder what that is. What is it?
Come Saturday, March 5th at 2 p.m. in West Lafayette, Indiana, there are going to be two teams that are duking it out for an extremely important game for both teams, really. But this is going to be arguably one of the biggest rivalry games that in Purdue, Indiana basketball that we've seen in quite a while, because obviously Purdue had IU's number for quite a while there. IU comes and stuns them in Assembly Hall this year. And now IU needs this win desperately to try to get into the tournament, and Purdue needs to cement the fact that we're still top dog here. And obviously coming into Mackey to do it, it's going to be a madhouse. Trace Jackson Davis is going to be doing everything he can to stay out of foul trouble, which is what plagued him in their first matchup this season. Like you said, he does a little bit of everything, but I think the fun thing to notice is the one thing that he does absolutely none of is shoot the three ball at an absolute 0% from three this year. But yeah, no, they have the ability to play very well, but they also have the ability to play very poorly depending on what IU team shows up. They've shown both sides of that, and a big part of it is what pieces surround Trace Jackson Davis and foul trouble. Race Thompson has been a very solid role player for them, and has emerged into a much bigger role than I think a lot of people expected, including me. And they added some guys via the transfer portal in terms of guard play that has helped round out some missing pieces. But it's whether or not they kind of fit into the game flow, because some of these guys, it's like you don't necessarily know exactly what their role is on this team. And I think that's kind of been the struggle for IU, is figuring out their identity and how each player fits into their scheme.
Yeah. So those are all of the Big Ten teams that we are going to cover. And now we're going
Big Ten teams.
Yeah. And now we're going to answer the question, who is going to win the Big Ten? And Tim, I think I'll go first, considering this is your conference.
By all means, go ahead.
I semi-quote Forrest Gump Mom always said the Big Ten is like a box of chocolates.
I
You
think
never know what you're gonna get.
that's exactly what he says.
Oh, that's exactly what he says. It's in the first 4 minutes of the movie. Go rewatch it. But that statement definitely holds true. There's a lot of question marks and a lot of competitive teams in the Big Ten that can shock you or disappoint you. But when it comes to who will win the Big Ten tournament, I got to go with the team that's been playing the best as a unit, and they've been the hottest as a team, the Wisconsin Badgers. Their wins are pretty impressive. They don't have many bad losses. They've won their last 5 in a row. They've won 7 out of their last 8 games. They're putting it together at the right time. And I like Wisconsin to win in Indianapolis, but that's just me. Tim, who do you got winning the Big Ten?
It's really tough because as an analyst, as a fan of the game, looking at all these teams, obviously there's quite a few teams that have the ability
just do it already
to do their damage. Logic tells me Wisconsin is the most complete team, been playing.
But are you going to go with logic, or are you?
Heck no, Purdue Boilermakers all the way.
Exactly.
Man. I have to go with my Boilermakers here because here's the thing: come tournament time, they're getting Jaden Ivey back on track. They've got Zach Edey playing pretty good basketball again. The biggest thing is going to be turning around. I think the big thing on offense, at least, is getting Travion Williams back on track to be that dominant 1-2 tandem that they had for so much of the first half of the year, but have lost in some of the second half. Travion has been come and go on certain games.
Purdue and their big men, at least in the second half, it's been Batman and Robin. That is not what they want.
It just depends on who's Batman and who's Robin.
Batman.
Yeah, they want Batman and Superman. They want to have both of them flying at you.
They want 2 Batmen.
But here's the thing. I mean, come tournament time, I think that they're going to have a lot of these pieces working together. And I think a big question mark is going to be this Saturday's game. If they're able to get most of things back on track with a powerful win in Mackey, that's going to mean a lot to all the players, senior night against IU, all of that. I think they're going to be able to, even out of just that sole game, get some good momentum going into the tournament. And when they face up with Wisconsin in this Big Ten tournament, I have a feeling it's the third time the charm, because they got 2 different versions of this game. The game where they let Johnny Davis completely whoop their ass, and the version where they took Johnny Davis out of the equation, but they didn't account for the other pieces. But now they realize, even when they take Johnny Davis out of the equation, they've still got to be strong against their other guys. And I think in terms of game planning, I think Coach Painter will prepare them well enough to take this third one. So I got to go with my Boilermakers here.
Death taxes, Matt Painter. Stay true. Baby. And boiler up. Well, that will conclude our Big Ten episode and our final Power 6 conference that we're going to be breaking down and covering to get you ready for the conference tournaments and eventually March Madness in the NCAA tournament. We will be breaking that down come Selection Sunday, and we'll be having predictions all throughout the tournament. So if you want to see our picks, like and subscribe for more Running the Table content. We can't wait. This is March.
And you know what? And maybe we'll have another tournament challenge, brackets.
Yeah.
Submit your things. Let us know if you want us to set that up again. I would love to see it. Had a fun time with that.
We absolutely can do a Running the Table tournament challenge. But until next time, like and subscribe for more Running the Table content, and we out.